Bitcoin has two vectors that drive its valuation. One is adoption, right? How many people get orange pilled? And the other is the macro environment, right? We have governments that can't keep their pants on. They spend more money than they should. And Trump said, I'm going to cut the deficit. I got Elon Musk, he's going to cut government spending. I got Scott Bessent, who's going to bend the curve of debt to GDP. And you know what? The deficit is going to be higher, not lower.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Joining me this week is Mike Novogratz. He is the founder and CEO of Galaxy. I've been wanting to talk to you for a very long time, sir, so thanks for coming on the show.
I'm here.
All right, well, let's actually rewind. I would love to learn more about you before Galaxy, the early days. You just told me you were a helicopter pilot before, so can you just tell me about where you're from? Like, how did you get to be where you are?
Listen, I grew up in a middle-class family in Virginia. My dad was in the Army. I'm one of 7. And so we had, we had 7 kids, 1 bathroom, 1 brush.
No way. Really?
Classic suburban family. We thought we were wealthy. When you look back, we were pretty straight middle class, but very rich neighborhood in terms of, the parents were all engaged in your lives. Our parents were in the military or the government, great public school. I was a wrestler in high school. I went to Princeton. I wrestled at Princeton.
Wow.
And I did ROTC, which led me to be a helicopter pilot in the Army. I was going to do something cool after the Army, and none of those jobs actually paid anything. And I had a penchant for spending lots of money. And so one of my dad's friends, who'd been like a very senior guy in the military, he said, go to New York, make some money. And then if you want to do something for the government, you can come back when you're 50. And so I went to New York, lived on a friend's couch. I got a job at Goldman Sachs. And spent I've had kind of 3 chapters of my career. For my first 11 years was at Goldman Sachs. I became a partner there. That was cool, right before we went public. And then I did 12 years at Fortress, which was the first private equity / hedge fund company ever to go public.
Pete Bridger, right?
With Pete Bridger and Wes Edens. That was very cool because when we went public, no one had done it. And so we walked around for about 18 months like rock stars. And then the 2008 financial crisis hit us between the legs like a like a hammer. And we kind of went from rock stars to roadies.
Wow.
But battled through, learned a lot of great lessons. Fortress got sold to a combination of SoftBank and Mubadala. And then I became a family office guy for a year. That was fun. And I was kind of trying to figure out what to do if I was going to do anything, because family office is nice. People come, they pitch you ideas, They shine your shoes.
And that's when you've made it.
Yeah.
You can have a little bit more fun.
But I always decided I'd go back to work if 3 things got fulfilled. 1, can I work with young people? 2, do I learn something new? And 3, do I have something to add? And crypto was kind of perfect. I had been kind of an unofficial crypto talking head. I was one of the first old guys in crypto, that had some TradeFi experience. And so I thought I had something to add. I could give some knowledge to these young kids that were building the new future and try to convince my old friends that there was, people worth listening to. And I was learning a ton because I'd never been a venture investor. And crypto really at its core was about venture. Really, what are these technologies that are going to change the way people behave?
Well, you were very early to Bitcoin. You were like 13-ish?
2013, yeah.
Yeah. And this was with Dan Moorhead, right, of Pantera?
Me, Dan, and Pete Bridger, yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, what got you fascinated and down the rabbit hole when so many people in TradFi, even today, they're like really close-minded to Bitcoin?
Yeah, it's kind of ironic because I was the macro thinker and Pete Bridger was as a self-proclaimed world's best garbage man. Right, distressed debt investors, they buy dimes for nickels. They take things that are beaten up and, recycle them. But he had moved to the West Coast and all his friends were talking about this thing, Bitcoin. And he called me up. He was like, dude, what do you know about Bitcoin? I was like, nothing. And he's like, figure it out. And so I went on the internet and Googled it and, started looking at it. And I was like, wait a minute, Chinese are buying it. There are a lot of cypherpunk in creating this thing. There are people that are really worried about inflation. Remember 2012, we had the European financial crises. Bernanke had done QE2 and everyone was like, oh my God, we're going to have hyperinflation. Of course we didn't, but they thought we were going to. And I was like, pretty cool idea. And so my idea was, let's just buy some and for fun. And Pete was a little bit more like, I think this is bigger than just fun. I was like, all right, let me keep looking. And we didn't have enough time really to do the deep dive and think about how to build a business. But I had known Dan my whole post-Princeton career, at Goldman Sachs and in Tokyo. And I had been an investor in his first Pantera when it was a macro fund. He'd been sitting on the sidelines. So I called him and he did some homework and came back in 2 weeks. He's like, dude, this is going to change the whole world.
Wow.
And so I give him a lot of credit for my jumping in. I mean, Wences Kotz told Pete about it. Pete told me about it. I did some homework and said, let's buy some. But Dan was like, let's get in big. And so we originally were all going to be partners. And we've been intellectual partners and at times partners and partnered a lot of things. Turned out it was easier for Dan to do his own thing and Pete and I had Fortress. But the three of us really approached it together. I don't think I would have owned as much Bitcoin if it wasn't for Dan. Because he was putting a lot in. I was like, I got to put at least that much in.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You know, that game.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have also been like a notable Bitcoiner if I hadn't been such a talker. And I was at a conference and someone asked me about frontier currencies. And they were asking about, the Tanzanian shilling or the Nigerian naira. And I was like, screw those currencies. You want a frontier currency? Let me tell you about this called Bitcoin. And I had no idea the press was there. And you can see August of 2013, the FT, Fortress's Novogratz talks about Bitcoin going to 1,000. It was at like 200 at the time. And that was my shtick, and I was like, oh God, now I'm on the front page of the paper. It's the only time I was on the front page of the FT. For Bitcoin. And my partners were like, dudes, we said we're not going to talk about this publicly. Fortress was like a real asset company and you're talking about this crazy currency. I was like, sorry.
Right. And you're like staking your reputation on it.
Yeah.
But it paid off.
But because of that, I got asked incessantly to speak on it, to go to the Oxford Union, to speak at colleges, to be on TV, to be on conferences. And there is nothing like fear of looking like a jackass that pressures you into doing more homework.
Okay. Coin Stories is proudly brought to you by Gemini. Investing in Bitcoin has never been easier with Gemini's Bitcoin credit card. Earn up to 4% back in Bitcoin on everyday purchases like gas, dining, groceries, and more, with no annual fee, no foreign transaction fees, and no exchange fees on your rewards. And this summer, get 10% back in Bitcoin at golf courses. Plus, sign up today and get a $200 Bitcoin bonus when you spend $3,000 in your first 90 days. Apply now at Gemini.com/Natalie. If you're like me and want to stay on top of Bitcoin without getting lost in all the noise, you've got to check out the weekly CIO memo from Bitwise Asset Management. Bitwise has been around since 2017 and manages more than $10 billion across 30 plus strategies. CIO Matt Hogan puts together a quick 5-minute memo that breaks down the biggest stories in digital assets each week. Just go to bitwiseinvestments.com/CIO memo and check it out. And always, of course, carefully consider the extreme risks associated with crypto. Coin Stories is also brought to you by Ledn. Need cash but don't want to sell your Bitcoin? Ledn is the global leader in Bitcoin-backed loans, issuing over $9 billion in loans since 2018. And they were the first to offer proof of reserves. With Ledn, you get custody loans, no monthly payments, and more. Visit ledn.io/Natalie.
And so I then started trying to really understand it. And back then it was, the frickin' what's the double spend problem and the frickin' Byzantine generals. And if you're not a computer science guy, it was a little daunting.
Sure.
Read the frickin' white paper. I'm like, I'm not a white paper reader. I'm a storyteller. And so I think my breakthrough in being able to tell stories about Bitcoin was to simplify it. I was like, I get it. This is the first digital signature you couldn't counterfeit. And that gives us internet money. But more importantly, it gives us internet private property. And before Satoshi, before the white paper, there was no private property on the internet.
Right.
And Private property is the fundamental building block of capitalism. It's the fundamental building block of freedom. Every emerging market country that's ever done well does well because they get property rights. And so I was like, well, this is going to be cool. And so I was way ahead in my mind with NFT. I was talking about NFTs in like 2014. Of course, they never happened, but I was like, oh, we're going to have tickets that we can use and healthcare records. And this whole idea of a decentralized world got me very excited. And unfortunately, it really hasn't happened other than Bitcoin payments. We're starting to see it. We have some digital art, right? NFTs, but the flourishing of a decentralized world hasn't happened yet. I think it might happen now that we have new regulation being put in place and we have blockchains that are fast enough. But when I look at it, like Bitcoin has succeeded in a huge way, right? Some collection of first kooky people and then less kooky people, and then all of us have successfully orange-pilled enough people that Bitcoin has value because we say it does, right? It's the social construct that gives it value. It's not the technology, right? We could call it Michael Wurstern coin and no one would buy the damn thing.
Well, that would not be decentralized.
But you could fork it. You could fork the Bitcoin blockchain tomorrow and call it Novo coin, and it would probably have like me and 17 of my relatives buy it.
I mean, so this is actually a place where I'm more curious to hear your views because we've come so far. You've seen it since the beginning where everyone was really speculative about it. They didn't know what it would turn into. And now we have a president endorsing it and talking about a strategic reserve and all of that. What do you think is sort of the next step? Because right now, a lot of people are asking, is America going to acquire Bitcoin? We clearly are getting the regulatory clarity. Where are we at? Like, is this an inflection point?
I think with Larry Fink is kind of, there's before Larry Fink and after Larry Fink. And so the guys that orange pilled Larry Fink, they deserve applause and they know who they are.
Yeah.
And I say that because he was such a representation of skeptic turning advocate, and he runs the largest asset management fund in the world. And he's symbolically, before even the government, it was more important that Larry said, this is now an asset. He blessed it as a real asset. And it's on the screen of every macro trader in the world. It is just another macro asset, like gold, like crude, like the 10-year, like the euro. And so I think it's here to stay. Bitcoin has two kind of vectors that drive its valuation. One is adoption, right? How many people get orange pilled?
Yeah.
And that ball is rolling downhill. And the other is the macro environment, right? We have governments that can't keep their pants on. They spend more money than they should. And Trump said, I'm going to, cut the deficit. I got Elon Musk, he's going to cut government spending. I got Scott Bessent, who's going to bend the curve of debt to GDP. And you know what? The deficit is going to be higher, not lower. Right? Politicians can't help them. It's not just the president, it's the Congress. It's this unholy alliance of people that are in DC that get so excited about wanting to get reelected or having some vision that they think is just so bright that they need to spend more money on it. And it's not their money. It's someone else's money.
Right.
And that happens in Europe. It happens in Japan. It happens in the US. And therefore, fiat currencies get debased. And as much as I like Scott Bessent, and I think he meant everything he said, he's failing at bending debt to GDP. It's not all his fault. Congress passed the big BB. That thing did nothing. That did nothing but help Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And so, listen, I still hope our government gets it together and we have less government spending and at least high enough growth that we start bending debt to GDP curve. I'd rather have a lower Bitcoin price in a more stable United States than the opposite in lots of ways. People that cheer for the $1 million Bitcoin price next year, I was like, guys, it only gets there if we're in such a shitty place domestically. And I've seen countries that go into those places, right? When you have monster devaluations, you lose civil society. And you can look at it, every country that's had it, you don't want to live there. And so I like to think Bitcoin should act as a report card or like a governor to political systems really doing a shitty job.
Well, and don't you think it's going to get to $1 million because they have to keep debasing the currency in order to finance?
I think we will get to 1 million. I just hope we get there slowly.
Slowly, okay. What was your vision behind creating Galaxy? Because of all the companies that you could build, you decided to specifically do like an OTC, right? Kind of like a broker within the space. You didn't build an exchange. You didn't. It's
I wish I built an exchange.
Why is that?
You know, I thought back then that institutions would come faster, and that we were going to build an institutional broker dealer in essence, with investment banking and asset management and sales and trading and credit, which we've done. It just took a long time for the institutions to get here. They're really only here this year. I mean, they started last year with the ETF, and crypto at its core is the little man's game, right? It was a revolution from the bottom up. And so retail was a more natural place to start in lots of ways. But I thought, you know, my background was institutional. There was already a lot of exchanges out there. And so I thought this was a good lane. I think it is going to be a good lane. But man, it was a tougher journey. I wish I had OKX or Binance, right? Those big retail platforms offshore were just unbelievably good businesses.
Well, and you IPO'd this year, right?
We did.
I mean, congratulations on that. That must have been quite a journey.
A ton of fun.
Yeah. What are some of the lessons learned?
Lessons learned are, it's not easy to build a great business. It's about your assets go up and down the elevator every day. So can you create a culture that keeps people? We weren't prepared for, you know, even with Jay Clayton in his term at the SEC during Trump 1, he wasn't a huge crypto fan, but he wasn't bashing it with a hammer every day. And that Gary Gensler 4 years was just miserable. It was un-American. It was unfair. But it really tested every crypto company, every domestic crypto company, certainly, to our bones. Sam Bankman-Fried didn't help at all. You know, so we had to go through a lot of just pain as an industry. We were lucky enough to be well capitalized, right? The one thing we did really well at Galaxy as we were building businesses is preserve our capital and trade it well and invest well. And so, you know, we have a $3 billion book now, and we started at 300 million.
Wow.
And you know, we pay a lot of salaries and we pay a lot of tax, and so we've invested well. But that risk management framework was necessary. Would have been out of business twice. Remember, people always think 2022 was bad. 2018, the whole crypto market cap went down 96%. 96%. I've never seen anything that goes down 96%.
That was my first cycle after I got in 2017. I was like, wow, this thing moves.
One of the things that gave me faith is that by 2019, you know, we'd recovered a little bit. There were nobody leaving the industry in 2018. Like, we still had people coming into the industry. Galaxy would have these meetups in my office on 107 Grand Street. We just have free drinks for people. And it was literally elbow room only. Matter of fact, it was mostly men. It was not there were a few women. It was very men biased, but it was a huge swarm of crypto people, and was kind of a weekly thing or a bi-weekly. And kind of the New York crypto community would meet for free drinks and talk crypto. But it was accelerating in the amount of people joining our industry, even though the opportunity had just collapsed in front of everyone's eyes. And that gave me a lot of hope that this is not going away.
Mm-hmm. You guys made headlines recently, and I would love for you to share a little bit more about that $80,000 Bitcoin sale, because
everyone would like to
well, but it was
more.
fascinating to see. It barely made a blip in terms of the market, right? So it shows how liquid Bitcoin has grown to be. But can you share anything about that backstory? Because it was a whale that transferred to Galaxy. You guys sold it for him, right? 80,000 Bitcoin.
There's some stuff like we don't talk about our clients, and
Okay.
one of the reasons someone trusted us to execute their trade is because we don't talk about our clients. What is interesting is the market held up very well.
Yes.
And, will it have an impact longer term? Yeah, of course it will. Someone took off a bunch of crypto from that satiated a lot of demand. But that's how much demand there's been. These balance sheet companies, and I got to give Michael Saylor a tip of the hat shout out, because I'm amazed at how successful MicroStrategy has been, but all these balance sheet companies are now raising capital.
This episode is brought to you by Casa, the leader in Bitcoin self-custody solutions, helping people like me secure their wealth with simple, powerful multi-key vaults. And now Casa is here to help businesses and even governments do the same. Introducing Casa Business, a secure, easy-to-use 3-key vault designed for small and large businesses with team signing capabilities and a web dashboard. Start your Bitcoin treasury the secure way and protect your assets. Get 10% off your Casa plan at casa.io/Natalie. Next up, Bitkey, a Bitcoin hardware wallet with multi-sig security, inheritance, and a recovery system designed for real life. No complex setup, no seed phrase, just true self-custody without the stress. Named one of Time's best inventions in 2024. Use code STORIES for 20% off at bitkey.world. Up next, the Bitcoin way. There's only one way to protect your Bitcoin from government, politicians, and third-party risk, and that is 100% self-custody. My friends at the Bitcoin way will train you how to do this the right way the first time. No compromises. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Natalie to speak with the experts about making sure your Bitcoin is secure and private. If you use Bitcoin, you need a wallet that's actually fast, simple, and packed with features. That's why I love Speed Wallet. Send, receive, or swap Bitcoin and stablecoins instantly. You can also shop gift cards for your favorite brands with Bitcoin. And check out mini apps where you can play games, watch content, and explore new ways to earn Bitcoin. Download Speed Wallet now via the QR code or the link in my show notes and use my referral code CoinStories10 for 5,000 free sats.
My instinct would have been, people have had plenty of time to buy Bitcoin through ETFs or through, apps like Coinbase or directly in companies like us if you're more institutional. And something has ignited the public equity markets, and some of the institutions are coming in through these companies. And Michael proved it was possible. We'll see how long these all last. I fundamentally think he's special in that he's become his own crypto almost. Like, people invest in MicroStrategy as MicroStrategy, not necessarily as Bitcoin. I don't know if all these other treasury companies will have the same success, but it's great for Bitcoin. It's great for our ecosystem. That, again, if you think about when I said there's a macro backdrop, which we have, and there's adoption. Adoption means orange pilling people. And Pomp's out there orange pilling people, right? David Bailey and his group, that's orange pilling people. That's bringing people into the tent. And so the more people we have bringing people into the tent, the price goes up.
Right.
And then they get comfortable with, like, you can't be in crypto, you can't be in Bitcoin without learning that part of the journey is getting, I was going to say kicked in the groin, but maybe punched in the stomach every once in a while. Like, there's volatility that comes with it. And there's like a whole community around shared pain.
Yes.
There will be shared pain for some of these new entrants as well.
Do you guys have a Bitcoin treasury?
We have always had Bitcoin on our balance sheet.
Okay.
We have always had multiple cryptos on our balance sheet, and we have a big venture book on our balance sheet.
Okay.
We don't call ourselves a treasury company. If you look back from 2018 till really last year, most of the profits we've made have been from trading long Bitcoin or Ethereum or different, Solana or different cryptos and venture bets. Now our business is kicking in. Right now we have a credit business that makes a bunch of money, a staking business, a derivative business, an OTC business. asset management. And so that's now a $400 million plus revenue business. But 2 years ago, like in 2020 or 4 years or 2021, I would say 90% of the money we made was because we were long shit when it went up. Yeah. And we got out of stuff, right?
So how do you see Bitcoin continuing to integrate with the traditional financial system? Because now we're going to see, I think, the big banks all coming in, and obviously Genius Act passing for stablecoins. That's going to be a huge deal. So how do you see it kind of all fitting together? Because I would think that maybe the crypto firms are going to get acquired by maybe the TradFi firms, or maybe some of them have outgrown even the TradFi side. Yeah,
listen, we'll see how. I do think you're going to see traditional firms get involved in crypto, and they're going to start by lending against Bitcoin and Ethereum. They're going to start derivative desks and OTC desks. And so we'll have competition. Our strategy is keep skating to the thinner ice. I think you're going to be more on chain. You're going to have to provide something that Goldman Sachs isn't going to provide.
Right.
I think it's good for the industry, right? Like I always said, if Goldman Sachs would trade it and Bank of New York would custody it, there'd be a lot more people that would feel comfortable being in it. There's an irony to it, right? Because the whole thing was set up because we don't trust those guys, but we kind of need those guys to pull people in. It's this weird double-edged sword. But I think that's going to happen. I think the bigger move is going to be, Bitcoin has kind of got its lane as digital gold, and I think it's going to stay there. And I think it's a great lane, right? Gold's got a bigger market cap than Apple plus NVIDIA plus Microsoft. Like money is bigger than equity.
Yeah.
Right?
If we hit just gold's market cap, we'd be at over $1 million a coin. Yeah.
And so I think it's a mistake when people want to make Bitcoin something beyond digital gold. And I know there's people that, if it's ordinals or if it's payments, or I literally think use the blockchain tailor-made for money to be money. Digital gold, not even payments. And I know like David Marcus will probably throw a rock at me. And I just think, again, crypto is about narrative. And the narrative is so clean when you say it's digital gold, right? There's so many, like, blockchains are a dime a dozen in some way.
There's a lot, right? Yes.
And like, I like the lane that Bitcoin's in.
Okay.
And it's just, why make it confusing?
Well, let me ask you, going back to, you said like shared community pain, right? We've all been through these cycles. A lot of people have learned some painful lessons in crypto, and they wish they would have just held Bitcoin, for example. And since you're someone who's a believer in other digital assets, can you kind of share just your experience and why you do have that conviction and why you haven't? Michael Saylor has been asked multiple times, right? And he says he sees nothing compelling about the other digital assets to invest in. He's total Bitcoin maxi, right? A lot of people believe in that. And then there are the hardcore crypto people. So like, why?
Let me ask you a question. Why do you think XRP still exists?
Because they have a great marketing team and a lot of money.
What do you think a lot of money from?
From selling their coin and their ICO, their initial offering, right?
Listen, the XRP army care as much about their token as the Bitcoin army cares about theirs. It's just that simple.
It has gotten very tribal.
All crypto is tribal. Listen, I got a Bitcoin tattoo.
Do you still have your Terra Luna tattoo?
I got a Bitcoin tattoo right there. I got it at 20,000.
Do you still have your Terra Luna?
I got a Terra Luna tattoo there. Like these are tribal communities. And I used to be more of like, well, Bitcoin's digital gold and everything else needs a utility, right? Just like there's gold on the periodic table, the other 113 elements only have value because there's a utility, right? We use copper for stuff, right? That's why it's valuable. And I realized that was misguided thinking. What created Bitcoin and created this crypto movement was this breakdown in trust in the world. People don't trust religions. They don't trust governments. It started in 2008, right? Satoshi wrote the paper post 2008. And if you just graph trust since we started this journey, it's one directional, straight down. And so I get why Michael loves Bitcoin because that's his community. And I love Bitcoin too. But it's beyond a financial asset. It's a religion. It's a tribal movement. And it's the same thing that you're seeing. And I mean, look, Cardano has a $8 billion market cap, and you can shit on Cardano and you get death threats. There's a community that cares about Cardano enough that it's kept up a valuation that defied most people's logic, right? XRP, Brad Garlinghouse has done an amazing job of creating. And I asked him a few times, I think, where does this XRP army come from? And he said, I'm not even sure. Like, they care about this thing. I mean, when they went through that lawsuit, this guy, Doug Deaton, what was it, not Doug, who was the guy, Deaton? The lawyer, then he ran for...
John Deaton, yeah.
John Deaton.
Yeah, he was on the show.
That guy was literally tweeting 9 times a day, fighting this case in court. He didn't even know the guys at Ripple originally. This was part of his community, and he thought this was an injustice done to his community. And so I think one of the things that crypto has added to investing in general is the idea that community is valuable, right? Look at Tesla or Palantir. They're stocks. We call them meme stocks from a memic value. It's community. Mm-hmm. Find me one person in the world that says, I'm an Oracle guy, right? I'm an Oracle. I'm part of the Oracle army. Doesn't exist. No one's got an Oracle tattoo, even though Oracle's one of the most amazing companies out there. Larry Ellison's the second richest man in the world.
Right.
Equities weren't communities. Right? Crypto brought this idea of community, and it's coming from this breakdown of trust. And therefore, they can be just as passionate about CryptoPunks, the CryptoPunk community. Listen, do I think they'll all have the same lasting power as Bitcoin? No. But I've been so freaking wrong on how long some of them have lasted, right? XRP is still the number 3 token. Their people care about it. And when I say care about it, they are choosing to take their hard-earned dollars that they make as a salesperson or as a garbage man or as a chef or as a computer engineer, and they're storing that value in a community, right? In the Bitcoin community, we're storing it on this blockchain that is really guarded by this complex group of miners, right? We store our wealth in this thing, but it's because we're trusting in the community. And I think there's a lot more micro communities out there than I ever thought could exist.
Well, I think you're right. And to your earlier points, I mean, people get really fanatic about their coins, and they've clearly put their life savings into it. I guess I've experienced a difference between Bitcoiners and maybe people who are crazy about it, some of the other protocols that are out there, in just, I guess, their vision for what they want to address in terms of the world's problems. And also, I mean, I've never seen Bitcoiners like get so hostile the way that, say, someone who's really into this one token gets hostile against Bitcoin. I feel like there's a difference. Like, Bitcoiners genuinely want to address the financial system and what has caused so many people to become disenfranchised and left behind.
Why I say all the time to Bitcoin is keep your narrative simple. Digital gold addressing the complete debasement of fiat currency is your story. Don't make it payments. Don't make it art. Don't make it anything but that story. Let Ethereum do its story. Let Celestia do its story. Let them do their own stories. Bitcoin's got the best story. Why mix it up?
Do you regret any of your crypto investments? Like, if you could go back?
You know, the great part about being a macro, so I started as a macro investor, is we're like goldfish. Like, our memories, what? Because if you regret it, like, oh my God, I bought a beautiful jet with Ethereum when it was at
I remember
300.
That. Yeah.
Right now it's at 3,000. You know, that's a pretty expensive jet. I actually like my plane. I've never regretted it. And so I don't think you can be a great investor and have that word regret. Mm-hmm. It would just drive you insane. Mm-hmm. Because we know the counterfactual. Yeah. If I had just held on all the Bitcoin I bought originally. You know, what's weird about this community is that there are people, yourself included, Michael Saylor, first and foremost in the Bitcoin world, that are out there every day working their ass off to educate people to, if you're a core developer, to make sure the code is safe. If you're a miner, to create, nodes of validation, right? There are a ton of people that work for the good of the community, and there are a ton of free riders. Just on my coins, I sit there quietly, I don't say a damn thing, and let all the other people do the work for me.
Yeah.
And I used to give lectures. I was like, dude, you do well by doing good.
Yeah.
I learned that from Alex Marcos, one of the core developers, right? Who was one of the wealthier guys that got in early. And I was like, and I remember he once gave a Bitcoin to every kid at MIT.
Wow.
Think about that. That was probably in 2000. And
but half of them probably don't even know where theirs are.
Yep. $100,000, $16,000 each.
Crazy.
Every student at MIT, right? And I was like, Alex, you're like a freaking philanthropist. And he was like, dude, I own a lot of Bitcoin. Like, I'm trying to help create a good community.
Yeah.
So the price goes up.
Yeah.
And I was like, if everybody in the Bitcoin world thought like Alex Marcos, this thing's going to work. And it turns out probably 20% do. And the other 80% are free riders. And it still worked.
I have a hard time with the broader crypto message, just because when I discovered Bitcoin, it was a really transformative moment for me, because my family lost everything in the great financial crisis. And I had been, accelerating in my career, but never feeling like I had enough, like where I could start a family or buy a house, all the things that you would associate with the American dream. And I didn't understand what was so wrong with the system. And I was a reporter, so I was witnessing people pulling apart and getting more polarized and political and angry at each other. And when I discovered really how our financial system worked through my education into Bitcoin, I felt like there's this grave problem. The problem is that our money is political. It is a tool of the state. It's helped some people, but it's really hurt the majority of workers. And we can now economically empower people with this tool. And it's like the one thing that I think everyone's life would improve with. And it's, if you get it, I win. If your enemy gets it, we win, right? Like, it's literally accretive whenever anyone buys Bitcoin to the whole ecosystem and to everyone at large. And I feel like that we're still not even at the early majority yet, in my opinion. I know a lot of people hold Bitcoin, but I think they still don't understand. They don't dollar cost average, and we have such a ways to go. And then a lot of the crypto things that I hear about, it's almost distracting. Like, it's like there aren't real problems that they're fixing compared to Bitcoin fixing the biggest problem in the world, which is that our money is so broken. And that's where I have a tough time.
If the first people you met were in the Ethereum community, they would have told you a story about Ethereum, how it's going to be this decentralized supercomputer, right? That authenticates data, where all these decentralized systems going to be built on top that are going to be more fair, more transparent. And because it's going to have such acceptance as the blockchain that stablecoins run on, that payments run on, that at one point NFTs run on, that ICOs run on, that those tokens are going to become money. And now Ethereum is in second place, Bitcoin, but it's money. And you would have bought it at 1, like I bought it, and it would be 3,500. You would have made more money on Ethereum than Bitcoin, and you would have said, oh my God, it changed my life. And so a lot of this is what communities we started with. And I'm not denigrating any of the communities. I had a different approach, partly because I remember 1999, I'd felt like I was living in Asia and I'd missed the internet. I was a macro trader. I'd done Asian currencies and interest rates and made lots of money for Goldman Sachs and was feeling pretty good about myself. And my mom called me up and she said, I can't believe you didn't tell me to buy Amazon. All my neighbors bought Amazon and I don't have any Amazon. And I'm like, geez, I just made partner at Goldman Sachs. How about congratulations? And all my mom wanted to do, why I didn't tell her to buy $1,000 worth of Amazon. And I had a friend in Beijing who showed up, and he had a friend who had these Coke bottle glasses, white guy. You could barely, like he could barely see. And he had this company called madeforchina.com. And he had 20 million internet users on his email list. That was like the entire Chinese internet. And I was like, I'm not missing the Chinese internet. And I wrote him a monster check. it was a good portion of my liquid net worth.
No way.
Because I'm like, I'm not going to miss the Chinese internet. And poor made for China.com bageled.
Oh, no.
I was at Goldman Sachs and I was a partner. Goldman was in touch with every major Alibaba, Tencent. I could have just walked to the bankers or the private and say, guys, I want to make a Chinese internet bet. Who should I bet on? And if I had made 10 small $60,000 bets instead of one $600,000 bet, each one of them would have made hundreds of millions of dollars and some a billion. And I was thinking to myself, I threw a dart and hit the one bagel in the entire Chinese internet. And so my original thought was spread your bets. And so I approached crypto from that scarring of the Chinese internet.
Interesting.
Mike Truman, loved you, but you screwed, zero. He was the guy.
Wow.
Mike Truman. And he was a wonderful guy and he tried, right? I mean, lots of entrepreneurs try and fail.
Yeah.
But that was my idea. I wasn't positive what cryptos would work or not work. And most of them haven't, right? Up, down.
Yeah, price them in Bitcoin and most of them are going to zero. Or they are going to zero.
But plenty have done well, right? I mean, like if you had bought Ethereum at any time, you're feeling pretty good about it. We've always had our bulk, like Bitcoin's always been our biggest position at Galaxy, but we've always had bets in other ecosystems.
And do you do the same thing personally in terms of like your own allocation? Like, is there a certain percentage?
I have all my cryptos within Galaxy.
But as far as, is Bitcoin your biggest position? And would you recommend like a certain percentage that everyone have of their portfolio into Bitcoin?
People ask me all the time, of your crypto portfolio, I've been roughly 70-30.
70 Bitcoin.
70% Bitcoin, 30% other.
I mean, that speaks for itself,
Yeah.
right? It really does.
And that's, that's volatility adjusting. Bitcoin's a little stabler and safer. It's more, the more people that participate in your ecosystem, the more stability it has in lots of ways. And then when I talk to people who aren't in crypto, I'm like, I used to be put a couple percent in. Now I'm like, we're now as stable as the industry. You could have 15% of your, I know Michael Saylor say put 100% of your net worth in, but like, I think you got to walk people into the space. And so like you get someone to put 15% of their net worth in, that's a lot.
I mean, even Ray Dalio saying 15% in either Bitcoin or gold, that's huge. I mean, we're getting the seals of approval at the highest levels of in the investor community. So we're running out of time. I kind of want to get your forecast, I guess, for the next maybe 6 months, 12 months, or you could go as far out as a couple years. Where do you see this going?
Forecasts are tough. I think we're going to have one more leg up in this cycle. Like if you look at cycles, we're getting close to the end of the cycle, right? Like it's usually 2 years after the halving, we kind of peak out. That would be, 4 weeks from now, 5 weeks from now. But I think it's been such a strong year. We're going to ramp this in the fourth quarter is my gut feeling. The closer we get to April, the closer we get to having Jay Powell leave. I don't think Trump will fire Jay Powell, but he's going to talk and
he's out in May. It's coming up.
Right. And so we're 8 months now, as we get closer and we start talking maybe a dovish Fed when we shouldn't have one. That could be the accelerant. I'm a little nervous in general that there's what feels to be a frenzy, right? We are getting 5 calls a week on new, balance sheet companies. Like at one point, that's what bubbles feel like.
Wow.
Right? When the tab driver's asking you about the balance sheet companies. And so it doesn't mean I'm predicting a reversal. It just means you have your Scooby senses out, that there's a lot of frenzy. And the economy is doing better than we all thought it would. We'll see. Like again, a stronger economy is not great for Bitcoin, right? You want a weaker economy, and then so the cutting rates and say, oh no. And like in some ways you want the government to behave really badly.
Yeah.
And we'll watch. Like the economy is stronger than people thought it would be. Inflation's still under control. The tariffs haven't had a monstrous effect on it yet. But tariffs are just really kind of starting to kick in now. And so we'll see. I think the next few months, data will be really important. Like if we had October data, if you and I had a little crystal ball and we knew what the inflation was going to be and growth would be, that would be very valuable.
Well, we know they're going to print. So we know that nothing stops this train. They're going to keep having to inject liquidity. So that's always good for Bitcoin.
But again, our story is becoming so known. When everyone's telling the same story, you got to be careful. And so, right, that's how markets work. And so I think we're still, and here's the craziest part. The last chapter of any cycle, like remember the internet, 1999, people thought it was over, including me, at December 31st. It felt like what a perfect time for it to end. But fireworks around the world. It was Y2K.
Yeah. The
Dow basically peaked out the next day. That was it. And the NASDAQ had a ripper, like 54% more between then and February.
Wow.
It just ripped.
Crazy.
The last gasp of the bull market is often the most violent upward.
Yeah, that's when everyone piles in.
Yes.
And
so
we're not there.
I don't think we're there yet.
No, we're not
and I don't know
there.
if that's 150 or...
No, but some whales are clearly selling early, right? 80,000.
That's a lot.
Bitcoin absorbed it quickly. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for joining me. I wish I could talk to you longer. Lots more topics we could cover, but thanks for joining me. And where can people follow your work?
Galaxy.com. I'm on Twitter. Mike at, what's my Twitter? At Novogratz on Twitter.
Perfect.
And Instagram.
All right, thanks. Well, hopefully we'll have you back on soon, and we'll talk more about crypto, because clearly I'm the maxi. I always will be, and I'm a little skeptical about everything else. But thanks so much.
Be well.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Coin Stories. Make sure you're subscribed to the show so you don't miss any new episodes. And if you can, turn on those notifications and leave us a positive review. They really help the show grow organically with new listeners. We have a free weekly newsletter. You can sign up at thenewsblock.substack.com. This show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing should constitute as official investment advice, and you should always do your own research. I'm always open to feedback and guest suggestions, so please feel free to reach out at info@talkingbitcoin.com. I'll see you next time.